I did have it on good authority that Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen would make a significant improvement from its first season. While this source had also recommended to me Summertime Render, which I had also been disappointed in, I was more confident that JJK would be something that I would genuinely enjoy, especially considering a couple of you in the comments gave such assurances and that the My Anime List score was also considerably high. However, you've read the title of this video, and 1 movie and 23 episodes later, my disappointment is most certainly immeasurable and my day has been ruined. This is your spoiler warning, by the way, for the rest of the video. Let's start though with what I like about this anime, and it would be inappropriate if I didn't start by talking about the prequel movie. I think Zero is peak Jujutsu Kaisen. Everything about the style, the tone, and even the aspect ratio all contribute to this very well written narrative. Especially with an hour and 45-minute runtime, it's well spent and doesn't overstay its welcome. Some of my criticisms of the first season are basically fixed in the movie because the gags aren't too cartoony and the flashbacks are more naturally implemented. They no longer just pop up right before a fight sequence, but are embedded throughout the movie as Yuta opens up more about himself to his new friends and comes to terms with the events of the past. They really assist in his character development, and it's so good to see this really timid kid move to having a community around him and friends he can rely on other than the ghost of his dead girlfriend by the end of the movie. We also don't have a bloated cast for whom we have to learn each person's backstory. It's really cool to see each of the cameos of all the different characters we've already met, but it's without the baggage of us being forced to watch each person's flashback story right before a fight happens. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 also really builds up one of the best villains in anime, that being Geto. This movie really allows him to shine alongside Yuta with a truly diabolical plan to exterminate all non-sorcerers. Geto's a man of principle, but that's the thing, he's also just a man, and quite a poignant reminder to us that it's not just demons being evil for the sake of being evil who are capable of committing such atrocities, but it is also humans ourselves. I think that's why I really like Jujutsu Kaisen 0, and it's primarily because it's such a short story, still demonstrating character growth with a close to apocalyptic event to manage and having a few genuinely funny moments without being too cartoony. The same can be said for episodes 1 to 5 of the second season. Here, not only does Geto really shine, where we watch in real time an individual with such a great future ahead of him gradually break over the course of these 5 episodes. It is absolutely tragic to see his mental health decline and slowly come to the conclusion that the solution to all of his problems is to conduct the mass unaliving of all non-sorcerers. And the reason why he's such a good villain is because it is such efficient reasoning behind his goal. Why should a system where those who are strong and privileged be obligated at the risk of their own lives to protect people that they don't even know? Why should such a system continue to exist if there were strong men capable of creating a revolution? Geto is just like those who have committed the greatest of atrocities during the 20th century. If it is for the greater good, then surely the ends justify the means. At the same time, we see a battered Gojo Satoru who rises literally like a phoenix after having almost been killed and rises to the duty that is demanded of a jujutsu sorcerer. Not only that, but also for him to realize that the life of service and how good it is to preserve human life is a much more beneficial and greater calling on his life. Definitely plenty of stuff to like here about these 2 arcs. With that being said, let's look at some of the ways that Season 2 falls short, namely that being the Shibuya arc, which just drags on and on and on to the point where it started to become a chore to actually watch through the second half of the series. I could not imagine if I was watching this while it was being released, because I would have just tuned out and waited for the rest of the series to finish to binge at the end. However, I will say that there were a couple of fight scenes that I genuinely did enjoy. Nobara participated in a couple of battles, and she really does prove herself as a capable jujutsu sorcerer and even challenges the likes of Mahito. But keep her in mind because we'll be coming back to her later in the video. The bit where Nanami is like, I don't care anymore, it was so cool to see and was such a perfect bit of closure for literally my favorite character. This guy truly is the MVP. Finally, I really like the final bit of the fight between Itadori and Mahito because it really concludes well with the motifs of the wolves chasing the rabbits. The fight in its entirety does go on a bit, but that last bit at the end was really done well. It's all very well animated, but sadly drags on and on and on. There were a couple of fight scenes which could have been cut out, like all of these side characters who I absolutely do not care about, especially when Gojo's just fought the main bosses. It was a bit underwhelming when we were forced to watch the crew fight these junior level threats. Furthermore, yes, I did like some of the fight scenes, but they were held back because I was bracing for the moment where everything goes horribly wrong. The moment where the special girl gets shot at the start of the series frames the rest of the season ahead. I already knew that Mekamaru wasn't going to win at the start. I already knew that Nanami was going to die at the hands of Mahito, and I already knew that Nobara wasn't going to survive. The reason why I knew they were as good as dead was because it's been established that it's only Itadori who possesses the plot armor. It's an over-reliance on shock horror which causes Jujutsu Kaisen to be very predictable. Sometimes though, this shock horror also heavily neuters itself. The reason being is that people don't seem to stay dead for very long in this anime. There's an incredible obsession with Jujutsu Kaisen trying to paint humanity as always ending up being good in the end. No matter how bad these characters' actions were in the past, the intrinsic drive within humanity is to right their wrongs. The two characters who are the worst offenders of this are Mekamaru and Megumi's dad. When Mekamaru resurrected through his insurance, I couldn't help but think, why couldn't he just have died without that closure with his crush, or having to prove that he was innocent this whole time? Tragedies happen, and for Jujutsu Kaisen to engage in this wishful thinking is complete rubbish. Our human history, I'm sure, is littered with people who remain unremembered for the sacrifice that they've made, so we should let Mekamaru serve as that tale of someone who dies tragically, because that is far more noble and far more human to sacrifice oneself without the acknowledgement of other people. Same with Megumi's dad, who only came back because he needed to see his child grown up and make that comment at the end. I mean, a very poetic fight scene between father and son, not to mention it being very visually appealing, but a completely unnecessary episode considering Megumi doesn't know any better at the end of the fight. On this issue of death, I want to touch on the treatment of Nobara's death. I think her character arc over the course of the Shibuya arc was one of the finest moments of character development in this anime, where she starts off being completely unable to do anything to outsmarting an enemy and really rising up to meet her desire to help and not merely stand idly by, to then be able to contribute to the downfall of Mahito and so unfortunately blunder and to her final words. I was really invested in her character, and it's the perfect way to send her off in service to the cause and career that she's so dedicated to. Then this whole lead up to her death is ruined in a matter of 10 minutes. Remember what I said, that this arc drags on and on, because it's relevant here. We're forced for half an episode to watch a flashback introducing characters we don't care about and probably won't ever see in the future again. Frustrates me because a big part of characterization in this anime is so dependent on these sub-story flashbacks rather than what these characters have done in the present. Instead of depending on Nobara's present actions in Shibuya and what she's done to prove herself in this vocation of being a jujutsu sorcerer and what she's done to be good friends to her classmates, the writer falls back on what has happened a couple of years ago and how she's impacted the lives of people who aren't even relevant to the current story that's being told through Itadori. What's worse is that we're teased in the next episode that, oh, she might be dead and she might have a chance in the future, but we're not going to really confirm that she's dead. It's a blatant mishandling of Nobara's character. Now, quickly before this video goes on too long, I want to touch on themes. The reason being is that Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't quite know how to fully engage with them. There's a couple of things which are teased, like the over-reliance on a centralized institution which is unable to adequately respond to non-traditional threats, the notion of human suffering and how someone is meant to deal with that, the commentary on strength and control, and what happens when one benign power like Gojo suddenly leaves a power vacuum for hostile powers to take over. All of the themes are there, they simply aren't very well explored. I think the worst offender of this, of course, is the treatment of death and human suffering. When Sukuna does the thing where he blows up all of this area afterwards, Itadori is physically distraught after what has happened. But I feel those same sentiments haven't hit the audience to the same effect. The anime obviously wants us to feel sad about all of these people who have died, but in the Sukuna fight sequence, there wasn't much conveying of that human cost and how many innocent people have suffered. Anyway, I digress. This video is long enough. This isn't saying that this anime is actually hot garbage. It just means that this is a 6 out of 10 rather than a 7 out of 10 from me. That's not to say this anime is actually bad, as the animation's good when those MAPPA employees are given the opportunity to display their talent. And I still stand by the things I've said in my original video as to why I think Jujutsu Kaisen is a Christian anime.